You are listening to Bootstrap Farmer Radio.
All right, good morning, everybody. This is Nick and Brandon, and we are with Rob Torcellini of Bigelow Brook Farm in Eastford, Connecticut. And this is the first podcast that we're going to record outside. You're going to hear a little ambient noise because it's just perfect out here, and there's a little woodpecker in the background, so it may not be as clean audio as we're used to, but I think it's going to add to it. Mm-hmm. So, Rob, thank you for having us out. We had the tour, geodesic dome, aquaponic farm, and there's a lot of engineering that went into this. That was all done by you. We have seen touches of construction and welding and pumps and plumbing and electrical and rocket stove adjustments, and it's pretty phenomenal. So if you can tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Well, I originally started discovering aquaponics by accident. I had a small greenhouse I set up that was just for doing seedlings for our regular garden, and I had put a large water tank in there to act as a heat sink to deal with our cold springs, and started getting mosquitoes breeding in there. And a friend of mine told me to throw a couple goldfish in there to deal with mosquitoes, which worked great. Of course, the tank got murky, and I started doing some research online years ago to figure out how to clean the water, because I knew people with outdoor ponds do the same thing. I stumbled across one of the aquaponic forums. I think it was the Backyard Aquaponics in Australia, and sort of got an interest on that. You could obviously grow plants with this fish waste, and put one grow bed in that greenhouse, and it cleaned up the water nicely, and the plants in there started growing better than my regular garden plants. So that instantly got me hooked into aquaponics, and shortly thereafter I converted the rest of the greenhouse into aquaponics. Did a couple videos with that, had some miscellaneous electronic projects because my background is in computer science and automation systems, so I took a liking to try to automate a few things in there. So that little greenhouse had some automatic vents, some temperature sensors, automatic fish feeder, and whatnot. And I had posted a few of those videos of the setup online. From there, the New York Times had contacted me out of the blue. They were doing an article on aquaponics, and they wanted to do a small interview and take a couple pictures. So they came out and didn't think much about it, and a month or so later they published their article, and come to find out it was on the front page of their home and garden section at the time. So it really started to gain some attention with aquaponics and our little setup. And my YouTube videos, which would get a handful of views a day, jumped up to 8,000 views a day from that article. And it lasted quite a while too. We were getting people coming here wanting to have tours of this little Harbor Freight 10 by 12 foot greenhouse. And I was really enjoying the aquaponics. So from there, I decided to do our geodesic dome. I like to do things a little bit differently. People that watch my videos see I do all types of weird stuff. So I wanted to do the dome mainly because it was different than from what everybody else is doing. And it was something that I could build myself because it's made out of small pieces. It's lots of little triangles made into an arch, which is super strong. And I thought the architecture of it was pretty cool. So I set out to build that. I found some design information online and did all the measurements and calculations myself. Made up welded hubs for it because you can't buy them. Cut all the pieces over the winter, sort of made it into a kit, and then assembled it all and got that up and running. And that really started catching the attention of a whole different group of people, not just the aquaponics people now, but now I have the dome people really loving that. So I started getting people wanting to come out and get a tour of the dome.
That's a good t-shirt, the dome people.
The dome people. So that... in with that too, I was trying to make the whole dome setup really self-sustaining setup. So I installed solar panels on it to help run the pumps, and built a rocket mass heater to help heat the greenhouse over the winter, which works very well. I was always surprised how well the rocket mass heater technology worked. However, I didn't like having to feed it wood all the time. It's very hungry, we'll say. And so I designed a self-feeding pellet feeder for that. And it's gravity fed, and it just keeps feeding that heater all night long. One of the things with the rocket mass heaters is most people are just heating sort of a small area, so they heat up that heater and then they use the mass to heat up their house or whatnot. Well, the greenhouse is much less energy efficient, so when the heater is done, you do have a warmed up mass, but it really doesn't help heat that space, so it really has to be running for most of the night when it gets really cold out. So that setup, it's designed really to be an experimentation setup and for educational use. So it's not set up efficiently from a square footage per plant outlook. It's set up so people can walk through that greenhouse, walk around in a circle around everything, and get to see the different methods of growing with the deep water culture, media beds. I used to have some vertical towers in there. So you can sort of get a general overview of what aquaponics really is.
It's a really unique environment. I think it's one of the most pleasant greenhouses I've ever been in. I think there's a wood element that kind of brings you back to nature, and you have that wood smell, and the pumps are super quiet. It's a very quiet greenhouse. It's just very pleasant to be in.
You just hear trickling water.
Yep, that's all you hear. Since we're out in nowhere land here, it's usually quiet most of the time, so I wanted a place where you could just go in there and not be overwhelmed and have to put earplugs in and listen to air pumps and large pumps and whatnot.
We try to avoid recording in greenhouses for that very reason.
Yeah.
I think we could have done it in that one. But
When I do my videos, it's quiet enough in there where I'll usually just have a microphone pinned to me, and I can record in there with very little background noise.
Yeah. And we also thought that it was neat during the tour how there's a lot of talk about aquaponics where that's actually your thermal mass. You're heating the water, which is way more efficient than heating the air, and that you built a component into that rocket stove to actually recirculate the water back into the tank.
Right. So we can, as obviously we're losing a lot of heat overnight, I can fire up that rocket stove while I'm here during the day and just heat up that water again. And, we get some solar gain. Mostly during the winter, it's mostly heat gain from that stove. So we can fluctuate that water temperature 10 or 15 degrees in a day without any problem. In fact, I'll usually have to stop running the stove during the day because I don't want to get the water too warm in there.
Sure. Well, and it looked like the fish were just super happy and super healthy.
They're loving life.
Yeah.
So. Every so often we get somebody complaining on one of our channels that we're inhumane to our fish or keeping them in a contained spot like that. And that's like, compared to some of the aquaculture tanks, the density is crazy high. That's 1,000-gallon tank, and there's maybe 200 koi in there, ranging from 3 inches to 15 or 16 inches. And you can look in that tank and you can see they're well spaced out.
They've got a lot of space. That water's crystal clear, and
Yep.
if they got that jacuzzi going on, I imagine it's happy life.
Yep. We feed them well too, so they have everything going for them.
It's hard to imagine people on the internet complaining about anything.
No, never. Never get a complaint.
The production, I mean, obviously it's for you and the family, and you do take some to the coworkers and all that kind of thing. And this is an educational and experimental type greenhouse, but you do have a new house going up with solar wrap. And what's the intention with that?
So the intention with that is to go essentially almost full-time commercial with that. I do have a regular day job running an IT department, which I like. It pays the bills well, and but this setup is large enough where either I can do it working there in the evenings and weekends, or hire somebody part-time just to plant seeds and whatnot. So that greenhouse will also be aquaponics. It's a used hoop house that I bought from a company that had gone out of business. The hoop house is roughly 30 years old, so it was very cheap. And then we just reassembled it and are putting the solar wrap covering on that. So a lot of my goals when I work with the dome or with this new greenhouse is to not have to rely on a full work staff to build everything for me. I like to do it myself. It allows me to keep control of what I'm actually doing. I know what I'm doing, and I guess you can say I have trust issues when you start having other people doing work for you if you're not keeping an eye on them. So this setup, it's taken a while to get up and running, and we're hoping to have it fully functioning before the end of the year.
Got it.
We'll see how it goes.
Well, another unique thing that you have going on is you actually designed and make and sell a product as well,
right?
The Grow Grip. And we thought it was going to be a neat discussion between you and Brandon. Brandon doing the same thing also in manufacturing. So I'm going to kind of step off to the side and just have you two have a manufacturing talk. I will lead into it going, there's always room in any industry for a new development or something. And when you step away from that practitioner mode into development mode, it could be a distraction, or it could be the next best thing. So I'm kind of going to lead it in with that. I don't want people to go too far off the rails and go into full production unless it's a great idea. So have at it, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I know you made the Grow Grips, and I've used those myself for multiple years now. What I found interesting is you said you had a full-time job still.
Right.
And I was wondering, how's this guy? I know you're probably selling a good amount of Grow Grips, but how's this guy making money just tinkering with this geodesic dome? And it was cool to hear that you're now building the commercial greenhouse. So you've tinkered for a number of years. And so you're going to be so much more prepared, coming into that commercial production, because you already had other businesses, which was sort of training you along the way, and now you're just leveraging what you've already haven't done. So
and people ask me, it's like, how can you run this? You must not be making money, just doing a small greenhouse like what it's doing. Well, technically, the greenhouse itself isn't making money because we're producing our produce in there. We just consume it ourselves. So you could say we're saving money by not having to buy lettuce and whatnot at the grocery store. But just with the YouTube videos, that generates ad revenue, so that helps out a bit. And then the Grow Grip sales are helping to fund setting up the new greenhouse. So I'm not taking any money out of the business part of the farm myself to earn a living off of that. So it's sort of the money that's generated off the Grow Grips and YouTube is being reinvested into the company so that it can grow large enough so it could employ myself or somebody at some point. It pays the property taxes, and it pays for
Well, I gotta say, you don't look stressed out, and you look pretty happy.
No, I do it right.
That's a big thing.
Yeah, you look extremely patient, and that's what I was sort of getting at. You've arrived at this without rushing anything, and now here you are setting yourself up.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you have any type of a product idea, spend time laying out. You need to figure out what your market's going to be, if you're even going to have a market, how much it's going to cost to produce this thing. Do the spreadsheets to figure out what your profit margins are going to be, because if it's going to be too low, you may have what you think is the best idea in the world, and if it could be, but if you don't have a market to target,
how do you feel about going into an industry that's so small with a product like this?
That's one of the biggest hang-ups that I have. The nice thing about the Grow Grips is they can be used in the standard hydro industry. What I didn't see was that the hydro industry is it's more mature than the aquaponics industry. So if you go to them and say, hey, I have this little plant holder, why don't you try it out in your setup? And they're like, well, we've been growing with rock-wool cubes for 30 years. We're not switching off of anything. And it's like you can't get some of these folks to change over. But some people will look at the Grow Grips and they're like, oh, we'll try out a handful, and they'll like them. It's one of those love-hate relationships. Either they just are going to be almost too stubborn to try them out, or it doesn't work out in their business model. Or they're like, hey, these things are working out well. We aren't getting any waste product from throwing away rock wool. They can be used for organic growing. They'll pass organic certification, which is very difficult with a lot of other plugs. And they're reusable, so they don't have to keep buying new plugs all the time. So there's a learning curve with people with a
Sure.
product like that. Any new product is you got to convince somebody to try to switch off of what they're currently using and move on to something else.
Well, I've certainly seen a learning curve with rock wool as well. So.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of people that are growing with rock wool, and there's just mold or algae growing all over them, and depending on
that's flavor.
Yeah, it's flavoring, it's coloring, makes it look more natural.
Yeah, I guess it's cool just to see, I would imagine talking to the owner of Grow Grips a couple of years ago, because to me, that's such a crazy endeavor to release a product that, I'm seeing on all the aquaponic forums and everything, but now I realize it's not, we're all working hard.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just applying your skills in a different way.
And it really is, from when I first figured out what to do with it, it took a lot of trial and error to come up with the shape that I liked that would fit into the different areas, and of course you're trying to minimize the amount of plastic going into it, help increase your profit margins and make sure the product will withstand the test of time. So it's not like you come up with the idea, you make up a prototype, you don't go and hire a contract manufacturer to make these things that next week, and you gotta there's a lot of homework involved with that.
Yeah, and this question is for both of you, because I think it's one of those things people want to know is how do you even begin to know what you don't know to bring a product to market?
Google.
Google.
Yeah, you look in to see if somebody else has something out there like that. If they do, then you have to decide, do I want to compete direct head to head, and is it a knockoff product? Are you infringing on anybody's patents?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot involved with coming out with a product. If it's a small product and you're just sort of selling it out of an ST shop type thing online, and you just get a couple of customers as a hobby, you can usually fly under the radar and not have to deal with patent infringements or trademark infringements and whatnot. But once this is a real product that's shipped all over the world now, you have to make sure that it's not going to be a problem in certain areas.
Yeah. So. And I just want to mention, I've heard a word of caution thrown out in the past. Us farmers are kind of engineers by necessity, right? But you can take that too far and want to build everything and figure out everything on your own. So, you weren't relying on farm income, so you had the ability to tinker and mess around. So I just want to throw out a word of caution, like, if you're starting a farm and you're relying on commercial production, it's probably not a good idea to try to reinvent the wheel in any way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of tried methods out there for hydro or aquaponic growing. There are classes that can be taken if you know almost nothing about it, you can take and say, for example, take Ryan Chatterson's course. He has the whole business model on what you can do.
That guy's impressive.
Yeah, he does good. You have Ken Armstrong. They do their classes in house, and there's a few others. But you also have to be careful. You can take these classes and understand a lot of the fundamentals, but all of a sudden you take what you've learned and apply it into your geographic location, it could be a completely different thing. You have to know what your competition is in the general area, who you're selling to. Are you selling it to restaurants, wholesalers, or whatever? Obviously here we have a huge climate problem where during the winter it's cold and we have no light. We can go for 2 weeks without seeing the sun come out.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make a decision. Do you just shut down your operation over the winter, or do you heat your greenhouses and do lighting? And we've done the math several times over, and you're essentially barely break even growing in this area over the winter. But then you have to make a decision. If I shut down, am I going to lose those existing customers that I have because they're going to go to somebody else that can grow? So am I better off breaking even or running at a slight loss over the winter just to retain that customer base, so in the spring when I get things ramped up again, I still have them and I don't have to go knocking on the door begging for their business back. So there are a lot of variables to deal with. I've had people come here visit our place, and one person I was sort of taken back. They're like, "Yeah, we just leased this old abandoned mill. It's one of these areas that they got the lease for real cheap because it was a abandoned building here in Connecticut, and they're like, we've got the lease, now we're going to figure out how to grow in it."
We've never heard that story before, right?
Yeah, we've seen it many times, but this was a first-hand experience. And I told the people, I was like, well, is the landlord allow you going to have water up on the second floor, because the first floor was leased out.
Will it even hold it?
Yeah, will it hold that kind of weight?
Yeah.
And it was all wood flooring. I know, like the guys at Trifecta, they grow indoors on the fourth floor. It's all nice concrete floors. So
18-inch concrete floors.
Yeah,
so I think it's nice now, but I don't think it was nice with the
No, it's beautiful now. That needed a lot of work. But you look at some of these, take a look at some of the people, and they love the allure of aquaponics on how it's you're growing your fish, you're growing healthy produce, and they're like, I can do this myself. And some of them have never, they can't even grow a house plant.
Yeah.
Now they want to grow a commercial operation. So whenever people do that, I hate to be the bad guy, but I tell them, I was like, you better do your homework first.
You don't want to see a trust fund or a retirement fund go evaporate.
Right. I mean, if I wanted to, I could get my new greenhouse up and running far faster if I just wanted to, hire a bunch of labor and pump money into it. But, I have a business model that I'm trying to follow of, slow and steady growth. I don't want to be in debt. As soon as you take out a loan for $100,000, you can be paying, hundreds of dollars just in interest every month to pay that off.
Well, let's go down the road of what does it take to have an aquaponics business. You have to have the land. You have to have a structure. You have to become an electrician, for sure a plumber, probably an engineer, general carpenter. You have to have all of those skill sets. Then you have to know fish, which I would imagine is a pretty steep learning curve.
Yeah, it can be.
A lot of troubleshooting. Then you have to know plants and all that goes into that. Then marketing, then sales, then business practices and accounting. I mean, it goes on and on.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, but it's not just a little bit. You need to know a lot about everything. And running really any business, the aquaponics side of it is just a tiny portion of the business overall. You could be selling computers or aquaponics or pets or whatever, and that product is just a small part. It's running the rest of the business, going out knocking on people's doors to try to gain business, or setting up a website, which can become expensive depending on how fancy you want to get that. If you don't know how to set up a website, do you get a Squarespace or Wix or something like that and do a little prefab thing, or do you hire somebody for thousands of dollars to develop a site because you want specialized shopping carts or whatnot?
Yeah.
So it's,
to me, it seems like this is the perfect bootstrapping kind of business, because mistakes are going to happen in aquaponics. Pumps will fail, and you're out for like 30 days minimum when your fish are dead, or plants don't always come back that easy. So it's not like running a Radio Shack where you might have a bad day here or there. Like here, you might have a bad month or two.
Yeah. You have a loss. It takes a long time to recover.
So you have all of those business things you got to worry about, but you've got like dynamite all over the place with aquaponics. So that's why I say like your approach, and this is maybe not so true for like market gardening and other industries, but aquaponics especially, that experience can't be all learned in a book.
No, I don't think it can be, and that's one reason why. I could have started off with my little 10 by 12 greenhouse and jumped right into a large hoop house that can hold 6,000 or 7,000 plants in it. And part of the dome, like I was saying earlier, is for educational experience, not just for students that want to come see it. It's for myself to make sure I understand some of these nuances of growing. And when somebody says I want to get into aquaponics, the first thing out of my mouth is start with a small system. Have a little aquarium or something in your house, just so you get some basic fundamental understanding of it.
A bird, I got distracted.
Yeah, we have plenty of them.
Oh wow,
a blue jay.
Like I'm thinking here, can I get my bag without disturbing the podcast? One of the things you said during the tour is something that I've been preaching for years, is having that extra pump, which we have all been in the spot where we was like, oh, I wish I had an extra pump. And now there's another $500 sitting on the shelf, which goes into the expense. I think a lot of people don't realize you have to have those kinds of backups.
Yeah, it's critical. I've been burned a couple times. I've always preached to people have backup systems in place, and I was the first offender of not doing it.
And again, you can't go down to the store and get some of this. I mean, you have to have it on shelf.
Yeah.
Or, God forbid, it's on back order.
Yeah.
You never know.
So, I mean, if you look at my tank, there's roughly 200 koi in there. Most of them are worth $50 to $100 a piece. So that's a lot of money sitting just in that fish tank.
Mm-hmm.
You lose a pump and you don't have air going in there. Luckily, I have a low stocking density. I can get 12 to 16 hours before they're up to the top gasping for air.
Well, I don't know anybody aquaponically that hasn't had a die-off or two.
Yeah, so it's a harsh learning lesson to have a die-off with the fish. And then if you kill off your fish, now you're not getting nutrients in the system. So what do you do with your plants? Do you harvest them all out, start over, or do you start dumping organic hydro solution into your setup just to keep the plants alive? Or buy a whole bunch of mature fish from somebody and spend a fortune for it.
And overnight them.
Which is really expensive.
And this goes just to show why the industry is taking time, because everyone's trying to figure it out. Everyone's learning from scratch. What I like to see is all the educators out there sort of doing the good work, not necessarily for profit right now, but just training the next generation of farmers who this is going to be second nature to them. Because aquaponics is very much a touch and feel thing.
Yeah.
And teaching that at a young age is going to be great.
Yeah, and that's why I really like having school groups come through here. I don't charge for my tours for the educational groups. This week I'm going to have 30 third graders come in here, and I have handouts, little coloring pages for them that shows the whole aquaponics cycle, and they can color everything in. I'll speak at the local high school usually a couple times a year to their biology or environmental science classes, just to try to promote it to them. And we have the Pomfret School. It's about 20 minutes from here. They now have built an aquaponics greenhouse, sort of based off of what we did here. So they actually have an elective course where you can take aquaponics at a high school. It's really great to see this spread out to some of the schools.
Well, I'm not necessarily known for being a huge fan of standard education, so anytime you can have something like this that does practically apply some of these things outside of a classroom, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's great because especially in the school environment, they're learning their biology, with the fish and the plants and that part of it. And a lot of them are then dealing with, obviously learning some food safety issues. They learn some finance issues because they'll take that lettuce and whatnot and have a little farm stand set up. So it's not just learning about fish care or plant care. It's almost a whole. It's everything.
If you're going to you want to be a nurse growing up, you can learn about the fish health. If you want to be in finance growing up, you can learn about the business end of aquaponics. It's one of those things that we would love to see more in schools, because no matter, and that's how you find what you're interested in most. I mean, one of the classes in high school that had the most impact on me was like this entrepreneurship class where they made you sell T-shirts, and it sounded kind of dumb at the time, but it forced you to do the accounting books, and he didn't let you just give away T-shirts, and just that kind of opened my eyes to this business just thinking. And
it takes a special kind of teacher to do that. I mean, you can't just dump one of these at a school.
No.
And hand it off to somebody that doesn't care or doesn't have
can't keep the system running.
To
teach.
But you have companies now like Trifecta where they'll install a system at a school, and they teach the teacher how to use it, and then also part of their business model is they get a small fee, and they also maintain or help monitor that system. So
them and Symbiotic, I think, have been real practical. And doing the good work starting at the school level.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to a couple of school systems, and they're up and running. The teachers enjoy doing it. The kids like watching the fish, and even just from a simplistic standpoint, having a fish tank in a school classroom is great. The kids see it, they get bored of the fish, but something clicks. They have this end result where they see these fish provided something that raised these plants. There was an end result to it. They weren't just dumping water out and cleaning a fish tank and throwing that away. there's something that clicks with that one extra step.
You're forced to explore how that happens,
right?
Because it seems like magic, but it's not, and you're like, well, how does it happen? And then you get to go into the whole process, which is all science and
right. And so they can start these kids off at a young age, like we're gonna have the third graders and get it. They won't understand the entire process, but they'll say, these fish gave something for these plants to grow. And then as they go on through the rest of their curriculum, through 4th and 5th grade, middle school, they learn a little bit more detail about it. It's just like, taking a math class. They learn addition from the beginning and then work their way through it. So you just learn more and more. So hopefully some of that information will stick and they'll become nice biologists or farmers at some point.
That would be cool, year-to-year aquaponics track within a high school.
Yeah.
So a lot of things we're trying to get across to people is giving them permission, showing them that it's possible to put yourself out there on various social media channels to get your word across, something you've done very well. Mm-hmm. What would you say to somebody that's leery about being on video? I mean, video is one of those things. It can be as complicated or simple as you allow it to be. And then there's I don't want to look stupid on camera, or I don't want to sound silly on a podcast,
or that's not me. Because let me just say, you seem so normal and so like just a regular guy. There's no like ego. There's no like I want to be on camera. It just seems like
you're just telling your story.
Yeah, and that's part of it. When I first if you go to my really early videos when I was showing the other greenhouse, I was never in front of the camera. I hated it. I didn't like listening to my voice. I didn't want to, have my mug on screen anywhere.
And so nobody does.
Yeah, and so there were a lot of my videos. Even when I was doing the dome, I was basically behind the camera and just doing voiceover to explain what was happening. I get the views and whatnot, and they're almost like an engineering video. It's just here's a boom boom how to type thing. And my boss at the time, I would send him, he would get a link to the video and he would watch them because he took an interest in it. He's like, Rob, you got to get in front of the camera. You got to add that personal touch so people see the face and make that connection of this guy is putting these things together. And so I reluctantly and uncomfortably started putting myself in front of the camera. And I'm a very introverted person. I don't like being around people much. Obviously we live out here in the boondocks. It takes an effort for me to go to conferences and whatnot.
And then we force you to bring Jeff into Hartford.
Exactly.
It's terrible.
Yeah, having to drive through the city is not my thing. So, I've lived in this area all my life, and I don't know any of the streets through Hartford. I have to go with the GPS.
Oh, nobody that lives there does either. So
no, exactly. But it's partly is I just wanted to get that information out there. So I put it's not pride or an ego, it's just I put my reservations of being in front of the camera aside because I thought it was more important to people to see the story behind what I was working on so there could be an understanding. I try to make the point too that I don't tell people how their systems should be set up. I don't like to be the self-proclaimed guru, God, or some of the other titles that you see out there. It's really, this is my story of how I've put the setup together. And a lot of times I'll say, this is an experimental setup. I don't know what I'm doing. It's done this way with some people. I'm doing it this way just to see what happens. So it's really just come along for the ride and watch the videos and see what's happening.
We talked briefly right before we started this. There's always people who are going to complain about a recording or the background sound or anything like that. And as you're doing stuff like this, it's just very in the moment. A lot of times, we want to get this out. We want to put it together in a way that we feel like it should be, and then it goes out into the world. And hey, it's not for everybody.
It isn't. And I try to plan now a lot of my videos. In the past, it was like grab the camera, just go out and show a couple things. And now I have these larger projects. I do sort of plan ahead on doing some video. Like right now, I'm doing one on growing the strawberries, which we saw down there. But I'm not just this week the strawberries look like this. Great, everybody forgets about that. I'm doing the whole series, start to finish. So it's going to be 8 months of filming and
storytelling.
Trying to tell that story. I think it was Johnny Cash maybe that said with writing music or writing songs, you don't want to just play a song, you have to tell a story in that song, and that's what I try to do. I have multi-part stories with a lot of these, but there's going to be a beginning, middle, and end to the next video series of setting up the hoop house, and I did that with setting up the dome or doing the strawberries. You see a lot of YouTubers out there. Sure, they may want to show a couple things on YouTube, but they're out there with their shaky cell phone camera and wandering around and panning really fast, and you're watching the video and you're getting seasick watching these things. So it doesn't take much effort to go and buy a $15 tripod. I have a Sony HD camera. They're a few $100s. I mean, you can get a little tripod holder if you did want to do it on a cell phone, but the optics on the larger cameras are a little bit better than what a cell phone can do. You can zoom in on certain things. So it's just a tiny investment in hardware to do a video production that looks halfway decent.
It's a good evolution, though. I mean, you started behind the camera, but you started.
Yeah.
And we always imagine we got to be at the end result tomorrow, and that's what makes us nervous about doing it. But just taking that one small action and improving from there, you probably bought the tripod weeks or months into it, and that's okay. Like,
there's nothing wrong with that.
We're improving just like everything else, and now doing these videos is like, I won't say second nature, but it definitely doesn't bug you probably nearly as much.
Doesn't. Some days, the biggest problem I have with doing videos now is a lot of it interferes with the actual work that I'm trying to do.
Tell us about it.
You're trying to set up what you call the perfect shot. If I'm down there building on the greenhouse, I was like, oh, I should shoot this video of this. So run back up to the house, grab all my equipment. You look at the lighting. It's like the sun is at the wrong angle. Nobody's going to see. They're just going to see me as a shadow. I usually wait. If I'm planning on doing some video, I'll wait for a day like today where it's overcast.
Oh, I love overcast days.
Just to deal with the shadowing, especially out down in the greenhouse area. You're in full daylight all the time. It's brutal, and I get all hot and sweaty, and I'm wiping off myself all the time, trying to not look like a total slop. Yeah, and so you try to plan ahead for it. So I try not to be too spur of the moment with the video taking, but a little bit of planning. If you want to get into videos for aquaponics, it's a very small market compared to the humor videos and some of the other videos that are on YouTube. So you can't plan on having a huge following right off the bat. I mean, I've been doing this, 8 or 9 years on YouTube. Okay. I got something like 60,000 subscribers now, which is 65
over this
morning.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. And it's difficult to get subscribers. You lose subscribers if people just aren't interested in it. But it's YouTube.
How long did that take to build up? Because this is a long-term investment.
It's like 8 or 9 years I've been doing it. And it really, like I was saying earlier, that New York Times article was a big spike. It's good to get some, post your videos on Facebook or on the social media sites, but
even the New York Times, so that opportunity was created by you putting yourself out there.
Yeah, exactly. I guess you have to do it. If you're not a people person, you sort of have to become one.
As a business owner, I think you've signed up for that already.
Yeah.
So you need to get rid of the excuses.
Yeah, it's difficult. Even for me, I don't like knocking on people's doors or calling up a distributor saying, hey, do you want to go and sell these grow grips? It's not the fact that they just say no. It's just I feel bad for almost bothering them and harassing them to go buy these things. So I have folks. I've been friends with Sylvia, and then now JD and Tanya with the Aquaponics source. They sell a bunch of grow grips. I sell them through Amazon. That's a pretty good market with that too. So I don't have to go. I can keep doing my introverted things and work on the rest of the business and let the resellers deal with the product. Some people don't want to do that because there's a good margin that's taken out of that.
Which is some of the very same reason some people sell their vegetables at wholesale. They don't want to deal with the sales channels.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably what I'm gonna do when I set up the greenhouse. Is just we have Buell's Orchards here in town. They resell vegetables and stuff during their off season when they're not selling apples. Mm-hmm. So drop off a couple crates of lettuce to them and let them deal with it.
That allows you to do multiple things, right. And you're not going to be just relying on your farm income because you have all these other things. So it makes sense to give up a little margin to be able to do other things and diversify what you're doing and make everything stronger.
Yeah, it allows me to focus more on the things that I'm, essentially good at doing. Engineering products. I showed you secretly my next 2 things that I'm working on now. They're right in the queue and they'll come out. We're going to do another Kickstarter. For one, I did a Kickstarter originally for the Grow Grips, which, again, you can't just publish something on Kickstarter and hope somebody's going to see it. You have to have a marketing campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have an email address. So you're always in this chicken before the egg thing. You want to get your product out there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have people that are interested in, at least, do you have a mailing list? Have 5,000 or 6,000 people in an email list. Are you willing to pay money to advertise on Facebook or Google?
What you're saying is Kickstarter is not as easy as everyone wants to think it is.
It is a ton of work.
Yep.
It really is. I've done 2 Kickstarter campaigns. The first one, I was not prepared for it. I wanted to do a vertical tower type setup. That was years and years ago. I didn't know the market. I didn't know really what I was doing. I learned a lot from that. I did the second one for the Grow Grips. I had a good mailing list. I had the YouTube videos that I could use as my marketing campaign.
I'll tell you, and just for anybody else out there, John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire, one of his free resources, EOFire? EOFire.com. He's got a checklist on how to do a successful Kickstarter, and it's a many steps, very in depth.
I have one too.
Yeah.
I've scraped together different people's checklists from that, plus my own memory and knowledge of dealing with Kickstarter, and it's a huge amount of work to put it together.
I won't entertain it at all.
No.
That's just like
It's the benefit you get out of Kickstarter if you can come up with a product that essentially doesn't cost you a lot to prototype and get ready to get out there, and you just want to see if you think it's a good idea, you can put it out there and you're essentially pre-selling that product to people. However, if you watch Kickstarter closely enough, if somebody has a really good product, especially in some of the electronic stuff that mass marketed, they'll get knocked off before they can see these things show up in the Chinese market.
There's sharks too.
Oh yeah.
Looking.
So
I never thought about that. That sucks.
It's a horrible kick to
forget
see
Kickstarter now. Hell no.
Yeah. We're actually fortunate where the market is small enough where it's not worth the time for somebody else to knock off the product.
Mm-hmm.
Especially something, you see like those smartphones, and there's so many of them out there. You're just introducing another one.
Camera equipment.
Same type of thing.
Everything.
And you'll see, I sort of troll through Kickstarter once in a while. You search for aquaponics or hydroponics on there, and you'll see different products out there. And you look at the campaigns, and the same type of thing I was saying earlier. They did not put the work in to make it a good marketing campaign. So it's a shaky cell phone coverage, bad lighting.
If it's not absolutely professional, it's like, well, now it looks like I'm really taking a gamble here, because we all know the production issues that come up. Nothing comes out on time. Nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you can't invest in someone that isn't even going to put together a professional campaign.
Right.
But then that's what you're saying, like all that work up front for something that might not even work out.
And if they can't take the time to have somebody proofread their campaiign to fix for typos.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a horrible speller, so I'll have my wife.
It must be an industry thing.
It is. If you're in engineering, or spelling is not your thing. When I was very young, my brother got his first computer and had a spell checker built into it. This is a K-Pro Model 2, CPN days. This is back in the early 80s. And I discovered it had a spell checker in it, and I was like, I don't need to learn spelling anymore. So I rely heavily on spell checker, but you have to put a lot of time. You have to ask friends to review your campaigns. You got to, put together. I mean, I sort of ride on that fringe of, I wouldn't call it amateur on the Kickstarter, but I don't want to have to pay for a professional production company to do the filming and everything else. But part of it is because I've done enough filming where I can get something that looks halfway decent. And it sort of that part of it sort of gives the realization, yeah, this is still a small company. This isn't some huge company that's solely using Kickstarter as a gimmicky campaign, marketing campaign. I'm still, a one-man operation, trying to come up with products to make a living off of it. So I sort of make sure people understand that.
And I'm just kind of making an assumption here, but you haven't taken on these big loans. And for me, that was always a big thing. I mean, it's called Bootstrap Farmer for a reason, because that name came right to the forefront, because it was all savings. Nothing like that, because I just didn't want that pressure of a loan. That doesn't seem fun to me.
I hate the whole process of having a loan and just giving the bank all that money in interest payments. And a lot of these loans are, if you have a line of credit, usually they're not secured, so you're paying a high interest rate. I do have a line of credit that I utilize, like when I buy my grow grips, I have to buy, 1.5 million pieces at a time. It's a full truckload, just because of the way they're manufactured. So I have a line of credit. I quickly do that. I pay it off as quickly as possible. And every time I write that check to the bank to pay off that loan, I just just get very angry, but I get paid off quickly.
We think we have good ideas sometimes. They're not always good. So to use your own money, use it way more wisely. So it's just a lot easier to get yourself into that trap.
Yeah.
And using a big bank loan, you're sort of marrying yourself to that idea that you got the loan for.
Yep.
And did I imagine any of this? No. And using my own money gave me the flexibility, like I say, pivot 1 degree every day based off of how I'm feeling, what the market's saying.
Yeah. I just try to avoid that. Even I've applied for a couple of grants, and you get the grant money in, and there's a lot of stipulations with that. Some of the state ones that we have here in Connecticut, they had the rights to look at your books to make sure you spent that money properly. And I was like, I'm not opening up my books to that. Or they can set up tours if they want, come see, because we did one for doing paying for the hoop house, which I didn't get. But then you start reading through the fine print. It's like, if we want to send people out to look at it, to share your business model. Yeah, we still deal with aquaponics generally, but we still have almost a proprietary business model. You still want to keep a business edge against your competition.
Yeah.
And we're all friendly with this. Even aquaponics, you go to the conference, there are people that are competing with training, but we're all friends still. But there's a lot of little mini trade secrets that aren't given out. So I have a tough time, trusting. I don't want to sound too out there on the fringe, but I don't want to have to trust the government with my books and record keeping and what they do with that information to give it to other people that could in turn start competing against me. So I try to keep the finances to home and pay for everything myself.
You've obviously been in a position to give a lot of advice over the years. What's your favorite piece of advice to give out to a new farmer or somebody that's looking into this, even if it's cautionary advice?
It's the finances. If you're making a good living doing something else, I mean, you could be looking at it. You're like, yeah, I'm at a job. I'm doing okay. Am I really happy at that job? You're probably doing okay. Going into farming is a whole nother industry. Yeah, you might like doing things and picking at weeds in your garden, whatever. But there's a lot of headaches with it, and the margins on it are a lot tighter than just getting an income.
Be prepared to make half your income.
Yeah, exactly. You are going to sacrifice a lot, and you might have a 9-to-5 job. You're working 40 or 45 hours a week at a regular job. When I'm right now, I'm working on my regular job. All my free time is spent on the Bigelow Brook Farm things, product development, going out there and picking lettuce and whatnot. Our vacation every year, we have my wife and I go on vacation. Our vacation last year was going to the Aquaponics conference and then taking a couple extra days outside of that. And with Aquaponics, you have to, if you are going to go on vacation, you have to trust somebody to come and watch your setup, especially if you're a one-man operation. If you had some massive system, you have staff that can do it.
And that's when things are going to go wrong.
Yeah, it will go wrong.
That was why I didn't do aquaponics.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to go away for the weekend.
Yeah, And that's one of the nice things. I have a little bit of automation in the system where I can have my daughter go down there and look at the system, make sure nothing's on fire. But the fish feeder is automatic. I can leave it for a few days, and assuming there's no mechanical problems, the system and the fish will be perfectly fine. But it's just you have to make sure that you are now married to that aquaponics setup.
Well, thank you for being so flexible with your time and allowing us to come out here early when you're on a trip like this. It's always kind of up in the air for scheduling. So thank you for your advice. Thank you for coming out, or thank you for having us out. It's good to catch up with you again.
So we'll see you in the fall.
All right. Thank you again.